Yeah, we do have class tomorrow, but we're just going to go over some questions. I'm not going to do a new assignment or anything like that. All right, here we go. We're going to do the last part of section 1-2, and this part's called the quadratic formula. So we just finished talking about the quadratic equation. There's a difference between the quadratic equation and the quadratic formula, okay? The quadratic equation was this. What we're going to do now, I'm going to ask you to hold on tight. We're going to go kind of quick, all right, because we don't have a whole lot of time. We only got like 20 minutes, okay? So I'm going to show you how we got from here. And you guys said you've seen the quadratic formula before, right? I actually did it the other day, didn't I? Just real quick, I didn't like officially teach it to you, but I showed it to you. Do you remember what it was? Anybody remember? Negative b plus or minus square root, what is it? B squared minus 4ac over 2a. So what we're going to do right now, that looks crazy and confusing, doesn't it? But what we're going to do is we're going to take all the stuff that we've learned so far, we're going to take this quadratic equation, and we're going to turn it into this right here. So basically, we are solving for x. Okay? And this is what we're going to get. All right? So write it down. Let's make sure we get it right. Hopefully we will. Let's get rid of all of that. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to use completing the square in order to get x by itself. So pretend that a, b, and c are actual numbers, like we just finished doing. We finished doing 3 problems like that. Let's go through the steps and try to solve for x, okay? So what do you think the first thing we want to do? If these a, b, and c were actual real numbers, what's the first thing we want to do? We see this a next to the x squared. Do we want that a there? No. Remember we had a 3 in front of it in the last problem we just did? We had to get rid of the 3, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by a. Write this down. This is good. This is like one of my most fun things to do, when not in life, but in math, okay? So I could think of many more fun things to do in life, but for math, this is kind of fun. So watch what happens. The a cancels out, so what are you left with? X squared equals, now what I'm going to do, I'm sorry, not equals, what am I doing? Stop me. Plus, I'm going to write it like this, b over a, and then an x. And then what I'm going to do is take that c over a and throw it to the other side. Okay, I'm going to put a plus and I'm going to put a blank. Doesn't this look just like what we've been doing? And then what if I take that c over a and put it over here, what does it become? Negative c over a, because I just subtracted it, right? Subtracted it. Of course, this was a 0. 0 divided by a is 0. So that's just going to be a 0. I subtract c over a from 0, and that's what I get. Would you agree that's exactly what we did on that other problem, right? When we got rid of that 3. All right, what's the next thing we do? In that last problem, what did we do? We had to complete the square, didn't we? So we took that middle term, we took half of it, and then we squared it. So let's do this off to the side. I'm not going to do this in my head for sure. So b over a, I take half of it, so 1 over 2, multiply it by 1 over 2, and then what we're going to do is we're going to square it. So what's that? That's b over what? A times 2, how would I write that? 2a. And then I still have to square it. And let's see what we get when we square this. Square the top, square the bottom. It's easy. B squared over what? Square 2, what do you get? Anybody following along? Playing along? Everybody's quiet today? Square 2, you get a 4. You square a, you get a squared. So what in the world was this? Remember that, like that 1 over 36 we had on the other problem? That's basically what that is. All right, so what do we do? Now, it looks a little uglier, but this is what we get, 4a squared. Tell you what, just to make this look a little bit better, I'm going to get rid of that little blank that I put there earlier, just so it doesn't get in the way. Now, if I add it to the left side, I have to add it to the right side. Do you agree all the steps are exactly the same as we did on that last problem? Yeah? Now, it's a good thing we did those problems earlier, because now it should be kind of familiar on what you do. We force this to be a perfect square. And you're looking at this. If you looked at this before we did completing the square, you're like, what in the world? There's no way that's a perfect square. It is a perfect square because there's the x. What's the sign? It's plus because of that one right there. Now, how do we find what goes here? Well, we could either take half of the middle one or square root this one. You get the same exact thing. So what do you get? B over 2a. Right? Because I took half of it. I multiplied it by a half, okay, to figure out what goes there. Or I square rooted this. What's the square root of b squared? It's b. What's the square root of 4? 2. Square root of a squared? A. Works either way, doesn't it? All right? Now, this is where people don't like. We got to find a common denominator, don't we? So I got a and 4a squared. I'll just do this quick. 4a squared. Because actually using the formula is kind of a piece of cake. It's developing the formula is what I really want you to see. So what'd you do to this a to get 4a squared? Well, you had to multiply it by 4a, didn't you? So you have to do that to the top as well. I already got a 4a squared right here, so I don't have to do anything to the top of this one. So what do we get? We get minus 4ac, see that? Plus b squared. Are you seeing some things that look kind of familiar to that formula that I wrote down and then erased? Yeah, that b squared minus 4ac, remember that one? Okay, so it's starting to come into what we recognize as a quadratic formula. All right, so I'm going to write this over 4a squared. Let's write this a little nicer. I don't like that b squared on the right, so let's put the b squared right here and then minus 4ac here. So all I did was just add those two fractions. That's all I did. Okay? I'll drop it down just a little bit. There we go. Close enough. Now, what did we do on those other problems? We got rid of the square root, or the square by square rooting. Okay, so I get rid of the square root. Again, basically, I'm taking the square root of the left side, but I don't need to show all that because it gets too ugly and too in the way. But then I got to take the square root of this whole thing. And you got to put a plus or minus there. Looking pretty crazy, isn't it? But watch. Do you remember what we're going to do with that b over 2a? We're going to put it to the other side. So how do we take that plus b over 2a, stick it on the other side? We subtract a b over 2a. Plus or minus. Now, what about this thing right here? Again, on that last problem was the perfect problem to do before this, okay, because we did this. Remember, it was like square root of 7 or something like that, right? And then we actually figured out what the bottom was. I forget what it was. Was it 4, square root of 4 or something? I forget what it was. But watch what this is. This is, you already got your plus or minus. So what is this? This is the square root of b squared minus 4ac over, what's the square root of 4a squared? That's easy. Square root of 4 is 2. What's the square root of a squared? It's just a. So we write it like this. We are almost there. Having fun yet? No. What? I am. Okay. Now, I said I was just going to go through it quick, so I'm not going to take like a million questions on this, but you can always go back and look to see how to do this. Again, this is so parallel. This is so close to that last problem that we did. Because, remember, I forget what the denominator was on that last problem. It was like a 2 or something like that, or a 6. I forget what it was. But anyway, this has a common denominator, right? So it's all over 2a. So what are you going to write? By the way, this is x squared. I put x equals. Wait, hold on. No. We're good. We're good. Sorry. My bad. So what do we have here? We got negative b plus or minus square root of what? B squared minus 4ac. And that's what x is equal to. Let's push this in a little bit. Does that look familiar? Yes. It sure does. Just to be clear that we don't have to show all that work. I'm not going to make you do this, okay? This is just for fun. This is just for fun, okay? It was fun, wasn't it? It's pretty cool. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? That we took that quadratic equation, this thing right here, that ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We learned yesterday how to do completing the square, so we put that into practice with that quadratic equation, and we came up with a formula. That's our formula right there. All right, so let's put this into practice. You won't have to do that on a homework problem or a test or a quiz, all right? I just think it's important for you to see where it came from. I could have started, you know, like whatever it was, 15 minutes ago, and just said, here's the formula, this is how you use it, get the answer right. But that wouldn't be any fun, okay? You're probably thinking, where in the world does that crazy thing come from? Well, we just did it, right? We did it together. So I think that's kind of cool. So let me do this. I'm going to write this down. What you're going to do is they're going to give you a problem. Let me, they talk about some other things in here. They talk about this thing inside of the square roots called the discriminant. That's nice to know, but really it's not going to help you get the problem right or anything like that. But here's what you're going to do. This is example 6. All right? And it says solve by the quadratic formula. Solve by using the quadratic formula. So when you have a quiz or test on this, I will ask you to solve it certain ways. I'll say solve by factoring, solve by completing the square, or solve by the quadratic formula. And I will look at your work. I will look at your work to see if you solved it using the correct way. I'm not just going to look at your answer. Okay, doing math is not just about the answer. The answer absolutely is important, but when we're learning math, it's super important to understand why we did what we did. Okay, so here's the problem. We'll do one of these and then that'll be it. Okay, so 3x squared minus 5x plus 1 equals 0. So what I'm going to do, and let's go that color right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this quadratic equation, okay, to understand which one is my A, B, and C. So it's pretty easy to see. So which one is the A on this problem right here? It's 3. Which one is the B? It's -5. Which one is the C? It's 1. You see that? That's your A right there. This is the B right there. And this is the C right there. Everybody got that? So now, what are we going to do? Use the quadratic formula. What I would suggest that you do, I am not going to put the quadratic formula on your quiz or test. You have to memorize this. Everybody got it? I don't have a whole lot of memorization that you have to do, but you do have to memorize this. So I would do this every single problem, because the more you write it down, the more you're going to remember it. Don't just put it once at the top of your page and refer to it. Okay? Write it down every single time. You got it? All right. I'm trying to help you out here. I really am. So we've got the formula, and now what are we going to do? We're just going to plug everything in to the formula. So let's do it. So x equals, it says -b. So what is b? It's -5. But what does the -b mean? It means I got to take the opposite sign of b. So what are we going to put right here? A +5. Everybody understand why it's positive? Because we're taking the opposite sign of whatever the b was. Put the plus or minus, because we're just following this formula. Okay, we're following this formula. Then put a square root, put a b squared. Let's do that in our head. -5 squared. What's -5 times -5? That's 25. +25. Minus 4. And then we're going to put an a. What's our a? It's 3. What's our c? It's a 1. That whole thing, that whole entire thing is over 2a. So it's 2 times whatever a is, which is 3. And now all we got to do is just work this thing out. It's just arithmetic now. We're done with the algebra. Actually, we didn't really do any algebra. So x equals, let's see what we get. 5 plus or minus, let's simplify the stuff inside the square root. We got a 25. What's this going to be? Negative what? 12. So it's 25 minus 12. Can you do 25 minus 12 in your head? What's that? It's 13. So you got a square root of 13. That whole thing is over 2 times 3, which is 6. Can you simplify the square root of 13? No, 13 times 1 is prime number. So you can't simplify that anymore. Nothing goes into 5 and 6. So we are finished. Everything's simplified. That is your answer. If you wanted to, you could. I'm not going to. We don't have time for that. But if you wanted to, you could actually solve this by completing the square and see if you get the same answer. And you would. Okay? When I say it was over, I can't remember anything. 50. Oh, I got 5 minutes. I was thinking quarter of. You want to do another one? Sure, let's do another one. They actually give you 2 more to do. I'll tell you what. I'm not going to do all of example 7. I'm just going to show you how to start it off, okay? So example 7 looks like this. Somebody have their book open? Example 7. Is it 25 over 2 x squared? Is that what? Is it? Oh, I must have written them down wrong. You sure? Is there a 25 over 2 x squared? Somebody look at the examples. Which? It's example 8? Is it? Okay. All right. Is it 25 over 2 though? Okay, I'm just making sure that that's what it was. All right. So what I want to do, do you want to plug in 25 over 2 for the A? I would not. Would you? No. So anyway, first thing I would do is always write down the formula. After a while, it's just second nature to you. B squared minus 4AC over 2A. All right. I'd write that down for every single problem that I ask you to do, because that way you're going to remember it if you write it down every single time. So the A, I don't want that. I'd like to get rid of that 2, wouldn't you? So how can we get rid of that 2? Multiply by 2. But I got to do that to everything. So I'm going to multiply that by 2. I'm going to multiply this by 2. And technically, I multiply that by 2 as well. It's just going to come out to a 0 anyway. So look what happens. The 2's cancel. So what do I have? 25x squared minus what? 2 times 30. That's 60x. Plus 2 times 18, which is 36, equals 0. Now you're ready to do the quadratic formula. So A is 25, B is negative 60, and C is 36. Plug all that into the formula, and then you can look to see if you got the right answer. Okay, but I just started that off for you. Let me start off one more for you. I won't do the whole thing, but I want to show you how it works. Is this example 9? 9 plus 3 over x? 10. Really? Why am I getting... Maybe I just wasn't paying attention when I was doing it. I don't know. All right. That looks real crazy. That doesn't look like the quadratic equation, does it? So what in the world am I going to do here? Well, I definitely don't like these in the bottom, do I? So I'm going to multiply everything by, what do you think? What's the common denominator? X squared. So I'm going to multiply everything by x squared. I'll show you why. Multiply that by x squared, multiply that by x squared, and technically we're multiplying that by x squared as well, even though it just comes out to a 0 when we're done with it. Because I want to get rid of that denominator. I don't like the denominator, so I multiply by whatever the common denominator will be so that they cancel out. Okay? So what's this become now? 9x squared plus, what happens here? This x cancels with one of those, so what is this going to be? 3x minus, what happens here? Cancels, cancels, I'm just left with 2 equals 0. And now it looks like I want it to look like, doesn't it? Okay, so now I can do that. Oh, what did I forget to do? I forgot to write my quadratic formula. Promise me you're going to do this, because I'm telling you this is the best way. It's supposed to be a C, writing too fast. Write the quadratic formula every single problem. All right, that way you're going to remember it. I'm telling you. And then you just take all that stuff, plug it in to that, work it out, and you'll see what the answer is if you look in the book. Okay, you can follow along on the example. So I did the hard part for you. Okay, that's the easy part, tell you the truth. Just using the formula is the easy part. All right, let's, last homework. Everybody going to do your last homework? So this is part 3. Section 1-2, part 3. It's page 107. And I'm just giving you the odds again. So no evens on this one. So it's 47 to 69, the odds. Write that down. It's the same exact thing as I have in the lesson plans that I gave you. There you go. Look, let's end this week right. Come to school tomorrow. All right? They're giving you free lunch, right? Giving you free turkey dinner and stuff. Yeah. Come to school. We have class. It's not a free day for you guys. Okay? It's not a free day for you guys. Come to school tomorrow. All right? Turn this in. We'll go over these. And maybe if you're good, I'll show you a hiking with Aaron video. Yeah, I do want that one.